What's going on, guys? It's Swim here, and in today's Warframe video, we are going to have a look at an Incarnon weapon that was underwhelming on release. I'm talking about the Incarnon Onos. In this video, we are going to have a look at everything that this weapon has to offer, and then I will be testing this weapon out in both the Simulacrum and Steel Path. If you did enjoy this video, then please help me out by liking the video, sharing it around with your friends, and subscribe, as I post a wide variety of videos every week. With that being said, let's get straight into it. Looking at the stats of this weapon, the Onos is an automatic secondary weapon with a max magazine capacity of 30 bullets and has a 2-second reload speed. The Onos also has a base critical chance of 26%, while the critical multiplier is at 2.4 times. The status chance is also at 22%, and the weapon's primary damage output is puncture, which with the new status rework temporarily reduces the target's damage output up to 80%. This weapon, just like a lot of the Incarnon weapons, have a unique trait where after a successful headshot, you can switch over to the Incarnon form, which is a void-stricken arm cannon. This is where you can deal some incredible damage. To show off the Onos, I have two builds for you today. The first build I have for you is a combination between cold and corrosive. This build strips the enemy's armor and slows them down. Starting off, we have galvanized diffusion for the plus 110 multi-shot and on kill plus 30% multi-shot for 20 seconds. Moving on, we're using lethal torrent for the 60% fire rate and 60% multi-shot. We then have pathogen rounds for the 90% toxin, creeping bullseye for plus 200% critical chance and a negative 20% fire rate. Next up, we are using frostbite for the plus 60% cold and plus 60% status chance, galvanized shot for the plus 80% status chance, and on kill plus 40% direct damage per status type affecting the target for 14 seconds. We are also using primed target cracker for the 110 critical damage. The last mod we are using in this build is jolt for the plus 60% electricity and plus 60% status chance. We are also using R5 secondary merciless. This arcane procs on kills, giving us an extra 30% damage for 4 seconds. That stacks up to a total of 12 times. We also get a little bit of reload speed as well, and if you really wanted to, you could swap out secondary merciless for secondary deadhead for the extra 120% damage per headshot kill, but I find with using the Incarnon form, you deal a ton of damage as long as you hit your target. Over on the left hand side, we have a 78% critical chance and a 5 times crit multiplier with a 66% status chance. We are also dealing puncture, corrosive, and cold damage. Corrosive does times 1.5 damage to the Grineer faction and temporarily removes up to 80% of the target's armor value. Cold causes enemies to have a slower movement speed and can freeze enemies in place for 3 seconds. The last build I have for you is a pure heat setup that works well with both the standard and Incarnon forms. Starting off, we have galvanized diffusion for the plus 110 multi-shot and on kill plus 30% multi-shot for 20 seconds. Moving on, we're using lethal torrent for the 60% fire rate and 60% multi-shot. We then have primed heated charge for the 165% heat, creeping bullseye for plus 200% critical chance and a negative 20% fire rate. Next up, we are using pistol elementalist for 90% status damage and 60% reload speed, galvanized shot for the plus 80% status chance and on kill plus 40% direct damage per status type affecting the target for 14 seconds. We are also using primed target cracker for the 110 critical damage. The last mod we are using in this build is scorch for the plus 60% heat and plus 60% status chance. This time we are using R5 Cascadia Flare since we are only applying heat to the enemies. This arcane procs on heat status and deals 12% damage for 10 seconds. That stacks up to a whopping 480%. If you don't have Cascadia Flare, then secondary merciless works as well. On the left hand side, we have a 78% critical chance and a 5 times crit multiplier with a 52.8% status chance. We are also dealing puncture and heat damage, which sets enemies on fire and temporarily reduces enemy armor up to 50%. Moving on to the Incarnon choices, Evolution 1 requires you to get 100 kills with the Onos in order to gain access to its Incarnon transformation. Once this challenge has been unlocked, every time you hit a headshot, you will charge the Incarnon bar. When you activate the Incarnon form, the Onos will transform into an arm cannon that has 2 unique ways to kill enemies. While charging up the arm cannon, the Onos releases a wide beam that inflicts radiation damage. The radius narrows the longer the charge is held, and upon a full charge, it will release a beam that deals heat damage. Evolution 2 gives you access to 3 options. The first option is Marksman's Hand, which gives you negative 30% weapon recoil. The second option is Rapid Wrath, which gives you plus 25% fire rate. And the third option is Swift Deliverance, which gives the weapon plus 50% projectile speed. You can choose any one of these options, but I went with Rapid Wrath because it does increase your damage since you have the ability to fire faster. Evolution 3 gives you access to another 3 options. The first option is Extended Volley, which increases the base magazine by 10 bullets. The second option is Rapid Reinforcement, which gives you an extra 30% reload speed. The third option is Hunter's Rearmament, which procs a 10% chance to replenish 10 ammo on kill. Similar to Evolution 2, all of these choices work well, but I went with Extended Volley so I can have more ammo at my disposal. Evolution 4 has 3 more options that you can choose from. The first option is Lethal Lance, which procs 2.5 punch through for 20 seconds on kill. Option 2 is Incarnon Efficiency, which builds up 50% more Incarnon charge per headshot. Option 3 is Elemental Excess, which provides 20% status chance and negative 10 critical chance. When it comes to these options, I would go with Incarnon Efficiency since the Incarnon form is the main source of damage with this weapon, and getting the Incarnon form faster will improve your time to kill. Lethal Lance is also a great option, but the Incarnon form already has a ton of punch through, and I wouldn't worry about Elemental Excess since you lose out on critical chance. Evolution 5 again has 3 options to choose from. The first option is Sequential Skullbuster, where on consecutive headshots you gain plus 30% headshot damage. That stacks up to 4 times. Option 2 is Impaler's Ferocity, which on punch through you gain 200% damage for 10 seconds. Option 3 is Devastation Cascade, which when hitting enemies in the Incarnon form increases the critical chance and critical damage of the fully charged blast by 5%. Out of these options, I would choose either Impaler's Ferocity or Devastation Cascade. Sequential Skullbuster is only useful when landing consecutive headshots, so it won't be as useful as the other 2 alternatives. I'm going to use the Incarnon form much more compared to the standard form, so I chose Devastation Cascade. We are now in the simulacrum, and I'm going to be testing these builds on level 160 Steel Path modified Corrupted Heavy Gunners. I will be testing both builds with and without Warframe abilities to show you the minimum and maximum damage output. This build does perform really well, however Corrosive is better when used against the Grineer. The Onos as an Incarnon weapon is pretty underwhelming, but it can still do some sufficient damage. The standard form of this weapon shoots projectiles at a slow pace, but after a few shots you can start to build up some damage. Secondary Merciless is your best bet with this weapon, but if you don't want to run Merciless, then Secondary Deadhead works well. Another thing to note is that we are using galvanized mods, so it will take some time to reach the maximum amount of damage that this build offers. When using the Incarnon form, you really want to aim for the body so that the punch through can affect multiple targets. Aiming at head level will certainly deal more damage, but to use the Incarnon form efficiently, I suggest that you aim at the body. Here is some footage of this build in action with a few Warframes that synergize well with this build. Now let's move on to the final build. We're going to be versing the same level 160 Steel Path modified Corrupted Heavy Gunners. Same deal as before, I will use this build with and without Warframe abilities to show you the minimum and maximum damage output. This time we are focusing on the pure heat stacking build. This build performs extremely well with the new status rework. The standard form of this weapon is pretty good, but it is a single target weapon, so dealing with groups of enemies can be a bit of a struggle. When it comes to arcanes for this build, the standard secondary merciless and deadhead do work, but since this build focuses on pure heat, Cascadia Flare is a better option since we are stacking only heat damage. We are also using galvanized mods once again, so it will take some time to reach the maximum amount of damage this weapon can dish out. The Incarnon form with this build is even better since the arm cannon's fully charged blast deals heat damage, in turn stacking that damage even further. You definitely need to try out this build, just have a look at this. Here is some more footage of this build in action with a few Warframes that synergize well with this build. Now that the testing is out of the way, let's head on over to the Steel Path to see how this weapon performs. We are now in the Void on Mott, Steel Path of course, and let's see what this weapon is capable of. Overall, I think that the Onos is a pretty underwhelming weapon, but it can output some serious damage. The Incarnon form could be better in a number of ways, but I think what we got isn't terrible. Incarnon weapons are meant to be the best of the best, but I think the Onos doesn't even come close. The arm cannon transformation suits this weapon. I just think that some adjustments could be made to make this weapon usable in everyday gameplay. Making the arm cannon charge faster and reducing the cost needed to fire a fully charged shot will give this weapon the justice it deserves. With the main issues aside, this weapon can still tackle early game and basic Steel Path content, and if we were talking Rivens, then I would suggest to try to roll for either damage, multi-shot, critical damage, or critical chance. But enough talk, let's see how this weapon performs against an Acolyte. This time it is Misery. Alrighty guys, so that is the end of the video. I hope you all have enjoyed. Please let me know down below what you think of the Onos overall. And if you have any ideas to make this weapon more usable, then let us know down below in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video, sharing it around, and also subscribe to the channel as I do post a wide variety of content every week. If there is anything I can improve on, then please let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been Swim, guys. Later.